Hello and welcome to WJTS in.form. I'm Bill Potter, your host. Thank you for joining us on this Good Friday. We want to thank our state representative for District 63 for taking time from his day on this Good Friday to join us in the studio to talk about legislation, and that is Mark Messmer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate the invitation, and I wish a happy Easter and a happy Good Friday to all the Channel 18 viewers, and be sure you take the time to realize what this weekend's all about and spend some time at your church and with your family, and reflect and enjoy the weekend.
All right. Well, Mark, let's talk about some bills that have gone and have now passed. They've gone from the House to the Senate, and they've passed.
There's currently 10 House bills that have passed the Senate that are on the governor's desk for signature. We have one Senate bill that's been signed into law, the Senate Bill 319, that was property tax bill early in the session for farmers. I've got some other bills that have made it through. One that I had received final passage this week was the House Bill 1027. It was the civil immunity for engineers, architects, surveyors that are called in during a state of emergency to volunteer their services for the state or the federal government, dealing with issues like maybe the State Fair stage collapse a couple summers ago, or the tornadoes in Henryville last year, where they come in and try to do assessments and deal with public safety issues. When they're volunteering their time, then we exempt them from liability issues. If they're paid to come in as a consultant, then that doesn't apply. But when they're volunteering, 25 other states have that. Received final passage this week in the Senate, so it'll be off to the governor's desk shortly to be signed as well.
Okay, and unfortunately, we're going to talk about now two bills that have to do with drugs.
Sure.
And that one has to do with pseudoephedrine.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I try to pick through all of the bills we deal with every week and find some that might have some interest in the community. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are just technical and updating statutes. But one was Senate Bill 496, and that deals with the methamphetamine problem. And Indiana's one of the, one of the higher per capita states on methamphetamine arrests and labs that they, discover and whatnot. And part of the process for that is using pseudoephedrine, to make the methamphetamine. The past couple years, there's been bills filed that would have made pseudoephedrine prescription again, and only a couple of states have gone to that level of regulation, and there's really been no negligible decrease in methamphetamine use or production in those states. So not really sure that's the direction we need to head completely. But 496, what that does is it allows the normal law-abiding citizen to buy the equivalent of 2 boxes of the 96 count of pseudoephedrine, any brand, store brand, Sudafed would be the trade name. 2 96 count boxes per month. You can get 1 per day, twice a month, and you can buy that much, for equivalent of 8 months out of the year. They'll just track your total, and when you've bought 16 boxes equivalent of that throughout the year, beyond that you'd have to have a prescription. But beyond that, you might be needing some additional medical observation anyway. Mm-hmm. And that can be in whether it's in cold pills or cold liquids. I mean, whatever different forms, they'll know the milligrams content in each container you buy, and they'll add it up. And there's part of an electronic real-time tracking system that now every retailer that's going to sell pseudoephedrine or ephedrine products, has to be in that electronic, real-time monitoring program. They won't have a choice anymore. So every purchase you have, they'll ask you for your ID. They swipe it, and it collects the data and will limit how much you can get. But it's a pretty reasonable limit that doesn't really infringe on most folks will never need to go to get a prescription for that.
Now, I always think of pseudoephedrine being only in Sudafed, but that's not true. It's in a lot of medicines.
It could be in other cold medicines. Anything that has a decongestant, they'll either use it. Many still use the pseudoephedrine as its decongestant. Some use non-Sudafed containing decongestants. But if you can still get it out on the shelf, then it doesn't have pseudoephedrine in it. If you got to go behind the counter, to get it, all of those products have to be kept behind the pharmacist's counter.
Okay, so are there varying degrees of amounts that are in different cold medicines? It's been a while since I bought cold medicine, and now I guess I'm going to be carded.
Any dose that has it is typically going to have 30 milligram. The 30 milligram tablet that you would take 2 of them. I guess any dosage is going to have that equivalent dosage, whether it's oral. I mean, whether it's a liquid or whether it's part of a multi-symptom cold pill. But they're all going to have that same basic dosage in every tablet.
Okay. Was there already a law on the books? Was there something already that dealt with being able to buy this?
There was always a limit on how much. I mean, you could up till this year, you could only buy 1 equivalent 96 count box per day and 2 per month. That was the current limit.
Okay.
But there was not a. I mean, you could buy that for 12 months a year. This is just backing it down to 8 months a year.
Okay. And was it tracked at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so
Yeah.
so it's been tracked. That's a system that's already in place.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's just before, I think it was basically pharmacies. There might have been limited quantities that they didn't have to track, but basically any retail sales of that will have to be kept behind counter and tracked in the system.
Okay. And then another drug law that has passed and is going to the governor's desk has to do with synthetic
marijuana.
Okay.
Yeah, and every year we've kind of dealt with, and I think every year I've been up there. There used to just be a couple of synthetic products out there that you could buy, at any convenience store, and we've tried to write rules to deal with the specific, brands of those products that they come out with. And every time you come up with another tweak to that, and outlaw that, then the marketers or manufacturers of that product change it a little bit. Still has the same effect, but it keeps having a different chemical compound, so it's not, illegal.
Okay.
Well, we're going to give the Attorney General, the ability, to if it's a synthetic look-alike, if it has the same properties, it does the same intent as the marijuana substitutes, we're going to give the Attorney General the ability, by rulemaking to monitor that and let him move as fast as the manufacturers change and move that product to keep up with the creativity of the drug manufacturers on that product.
Okay, now maybe I guess I'm uneducated. Is this something that is smoked?
It could be, typically would be.
Okay.
Bath salts, incense type, they're sold as an incense, but they're really synthetic marijuana.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So typically smoked.
So then who gets in trouble for this? The people selling it?
The retailer that sells it, yeah.
Okay,
They can lose their business license.
And this law comes into effect, the governor signs it, is it July 1st?
I didn't look to see if it was upon signature or July 1st. Typically, they're July 1st.
Okay.
I didn't look to see if this one had an emergency inaction date or not, but I would expect it to be July 1st probably.
Okay. And then in Jasper, there's always been talk about the flooding with Patoka River, and there are certain locations along Patoka that are in the floodway. And you have submitted a bill that has made it to the Senate and will be voted on.
It's up for final passage in the Senate now. It was originally a bill that I started that dealt with some levee work in Davies County, or really any levee that's Army Corps of Engineers inspected. The same code section deals with the issue that we've got in the floodway on the Riverwalk area development, and so the city of Jasper had one of their attorneys that they had hired to help them kind of develop their master plan. They said, well, if you guys want to develop that in Terre Haute and Evansville, they've been given exceptions, in statute to allow in those floodway areas and the same type of industrial buildings that they want to, renovate into residential properties. They've been in those two areas. They've been given exception to allow development of that. Let's try it. So it's in the same code section. So it was, it met the germaneness rules that the legislature usually requires, that if you're going to amend another idea like that, it has to be at least in the same code section dealing with the same type of work. And so we talked to the folks in the Senate when my original levy bill got over there, and they were more than happy to allow the Jasper Cabinet buildings along the riverfront there. They're in the floodway, which without this exception would have prohibited them to be developed for any residential property. And even the DNR said, we're totally fine with it, but make sure your levels with your bedrooms, the first bedroom level that you build, is 2 feet above any historic flood level elevation. And with that it got amended on the floor of the Senate Thursday, and now it's up for final passage on Monday.
So if it passes on Monday, is it likely it will?
It should. Okay. Yeah, it's passed unanimously out of the committee with those amendments in it. The only additional amendment they put on the floor was the 2-foot level that DNR wanted. I would expect it to pass probably unanimously. And then since it changed in the Senate, it'll have to come back and we'll have to vote on it one more time in the House. I'm sure I'll be given the ability to concur with those changes, and then we'll have to vote one more time in the House. So within a couple weeks we should have all that back and done for the session and off to the governor's desk for signature as well.
And then that opens the way for new development, mm-hmm. or to redo some of the buildings that are down there, right. for a different kind of purpose.
Right. They'll be able to do multi-use, even on the first floor that's in the flood, that's in the floodway elevation. They could develop that for commercial mm-hmm. Development, and then have apartments on the upper levels, and it'll give them multi-use ability in those buildings. However they can be commercially developed and make something productive out of them, and really in a nice area that we've mm-hmm. We've done a lot of work in downtown and along the riverfront to make that an attractive area, and this will allow that to be a very valuable asset.
Well, I guess we've got 1 month left of legislation. Mm-hmm. Anything exciting that may be coming up?
Well, always the last bill will pass at the at the 11th hour on the last day will be the budget, and that continues to get work in the Senate. And they're hearing the different state departments and educational groups and everybody going through hearings on the Senate side like they did on the House side. And April 15th they'll get their final revenue forecast from the state budget agency. They'll take that, and then they'll make final adjustments and put their handprint on on the budget. I think structurally the overall way it left the House will be similar as it leaves the Senate. I don't think there's going to be any drastic changes. They like the idea of additional road funding mm-hmm. for state and county, city, and state will all get a significant increase the way we're setting up the committing all the fuel taxes to road work, which they should have been long ago. But we'll get that done. The Senate likes that same concept to it. I would expect to see similar funding to education, higher education, K through 12. Obviously, when we get the final forecast, if the revenues are up, they could tweak those up a little bit. If revenues trend down, they might have to tighten things up a little from where it left the House. But the basic setup should be similar as it leaves the Senate.
Okay, well, Mark, thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
And happy Easter to you.
Thank you. Happy Easter to you, and happy Easter to all you folks at home.
Thank you for watching WJTS in Form. We are local people watching local people.